Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And I was just saying, right before we hit record, thinking how awesome it would be if we had like an Unsolved Mysteries style theme song. Like, it'd be hard to beat that theme. That's one of the best TV themes, I think, as far as fitting the show.
How's it go? I haven't watched that show in a long time.
I can't even do it. Yeah. And then the whole time in the background, there's all the whoa, whoa, like, whoa.
That'd be good. The problem is a lot of our mysteries are solved, and the solution is always like, oh, the guy was an idiot.
Yeah. Or just people in general are terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's our show in a nutshell. It's just...
Yeah. Boiled down. We were talking off air. We're on air. We're on the airwaves. That's what this is. About how busy we were. And last week you were busy too. And I was proud of you because you still threw a real topic together. And I'm not going to do that. So, like, you know, the whole time...
I don't blame you. I'd lucked into one of those that was kind of easy that wrote itself. And if you ever go to our post, you'll notice that I always use 2 or 3 sources. There was exactly one source for my stuff last week. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to, this version of this story is good enough. Here we go.
So I do that. And I hope like hell nobody looks closely and realizes like 3 of them are Wikipedia.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing.
Cause
that's generally the meat of my sources, but,
yeah. But we were talking off air, and I was like drinking like a huge cup of coffee during that, hoping that I would get some spike in energy to do this, and I don't have it. I'm so fucking tired.
But that means halfway through you'll have to pee really bad, and that usually brings something to the table.
Or it'll upset my stomach. You listen live as Ben shits himself for your enjoyment. But no, I grabbed a story. I don't know if it's good because, like I said, I'm, you know, desperate times. Sometimes you just reach into the hat and maybe you pull a rabbit out. Maybe you fucking pull out a human hand and you're like, what the fuck?
That's one of the things, though, and we've probably talked about it. One of the things I like about going back to like a story or I assume creepypasta is that if it's good, we told a good story. If it's bad, it's better because it gives us something to make fun of.
Yeah.
So you can't really go wrong.
Yeah. And I went, this was, I don't know if it actually won. It was under the nominations page for best creepypasta of the month or something. And I don't know when. This story is called, this story is called The Children of Woodharrow Park. It's written by a user named CertainShadows. And
so not all shadows, but just
certain shadows. It's all one word. Certain shadows.
Shadows. Yeah, but I appreciate that. You're being specific. It's
particular shadows. Uh-huh. Not too dark, not too bright. Yeah, fuck it. Let's just go. Oh, and if you haven't heard the show before, in Non-Essential Podcasts, we tell each other stories. It's a lot of fun. Do. Here we go. My life had recently been plagued by a persistent bout of rotten luck. I had been terminated from my last job. The weeks spent unemployed were slipping into months, despite the stacks of applications I had filled out, and every credit card I possessed had been maxed out to its limit. Bitterness and self-loathing had poisoned every fiber of my being and left me with an inescapable melancholy that I was starting to believe was incurable. My latest humiliation had been to dig through my wallet for spare change as a cashier fixed me with a plastered-on smile and an impatient line grew behind me, only to find that I still didn't have enough money to purchase a meager amount of groceries.
I thought you said you found this online. This sounds a lot like my journal.
I mean, have you ever done that? Like gone to buy shit and not had the money for it?
Fortunately, no. I have had my cards get declined, and usually I probably had it before, when I was younger, it was like not enough money, but I've had it happen where like the bank, like communication thing is just down.
Yeah.
And I don't carry cash on me, or at least not a lot of cash. So that's always fun.
Yeah. I've only had that happen when like something like took a chunk of money out that I wasn't expecting. Like I was charged for like a bill that I thought would have been charged like a week later, and they'll just, sometimes companies will do that. They'll just decide, no, we're gonna take that money now. We need it now. And you're fucked. You have to deal with it. I assume that's what this guy's going through.
Yeah.
I headed to Woodharrow Park afterwards, a local secluded, sleepy stretch of land, to clear my head. The park was empty when I arrived, leaving me free to wander the paths alone and aimlessly. Hunger gnawed away at me like a familiar enemy I could never quite shake. In a final indignity, the previously sunny sky suddenly began to pour rain. I, of course, was not carrying an umbrella. I like this guy's like, the final indignity. I'm wet.
I like that he says, I, of course, was not carrying. Like,
I've never
know it's raining. I was going to say, like, I'll look outside before I leave and be like, it's raining. We have umbrellas because Tara has them, but I refuse to grab them. I don't know why, but it's like, I can get wet. It's just water.
Yeah, I mean, I like the rain, so I kind of, unless it's like how it is now, where it's like a fucking cold rain where I live. I enjoy that kind of weather. I feel like an umbrella is only good for those dramatic scenes where you're at like a rainy funeral. Yeah. That's what that's for.
But then I want to be the guy, like the camera pans across and is everybody like sobbing and holding their black umbrellas. And you get to me and mine's like Pokemon umbrella or something. Like
Super Mario on top. Isn't it great?
Yeah.
I was so absorbed in my own misery that I barely felt the gentle tug on my jacket sleeve. Looking back, I wish that I had kept walking along the park path without so much as glancing downwards. I wish that that's a weird thing to be like, looking back, I should have ignored that I was being like pulled by something. I wish that I had ignored the soft, silent plea for my attention. I wish that I hadn't made the horrible mistake of believing that a hand with a touch so timid and helpless was incapable of holding the power to be terrifying. But instead, I foolishly stopped in my tracks, and ever since that fateful decision, I have not had a single moment of peace.
It didn't sound like he had a whole lot of peace prior to that, though.
Yeah, he seemed very unhappy.
Yeah, he did the wrong thing. He set it up. I get it. You're thinking horror, and you set it up in this bad. Like he should have been like, "Oh, I just won the lottery," and like got married and whatever good things that you want, and then the bad thing happens.
I got a lot of money, and then I married my money, and then I ran into ghost kids.
Ghost kids.
I looked down to see two children standing at my side, and immediately felt a jolt of unpleasant surprise.
Well,
this is very weird.
I mean, that's how I feel when I see other people's kids by me too, though. No, I 100% identify with that.
Get the fuck off me, you little people. They're little people. They're Both stood no higher than my waist, one slightly taller than the other, and both were clad in black raincoats that looked more suited for a sepia-toned photograph than a modern-day child. They each wore matching wide-brim hats that drooped atop their small heads and obscured most of their faces, though I could vaguely discern that the taller of the pair was a boy and the shortest was a girl. I was unable to see any features above the pallid flesh of their swollen cheeks. Their lips were so colorless that it appeared as if they had little more than a thin white sliver for a mouth. The children's bodies were round without any of the cherubic softness associated with youth. Rather, they looked unnaturally bulbous, bloated to the point of near grotesqueness, which is par for the course with the way we feed our kids in this country. That's not odd.
Yeah. I was going to say, so far I'm picturing two Amish kids that love McDonald's.
Just isn't that, so they're probably extra pissed when they go into McDonald's and they want to use, they clerk wants them to use those touch screens they have now.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't. Unbrushed tufts of stringy blonde hair jutted from beneath their hats like a tangled straw, dry as brittle bone and seemingly untouched by so much as a single drop of rain. "Hello," I said, forcing myself to sound upbeat. They stared up at me in silence. The girl continued to cling to my sleeve. Are you okay?" I asked. By now I was drenched and eager to head back to my car. "Do you need some help?" But the pair remained mute. I stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do, when the girl suddenly began to grip my arm with a startling strength that made me worry she would pull me to the ground. The final indignity, getting put into an armbar by an 8-year-old.
And then pantsed.
Alarms rang loudly through my brain. I felt an immediate urge to extract myself from her unsettling grasp and leave them both behind in the rain.
Nothing wrong with that sentence, but when you say alarms like rang in my brain, now I'm picturing like the literal, like the Summer Reed movie, like the we're going down, we're going down.
I'm imagining like the cymbal monkey from The Simpsons. That's in like Homer's head. Well, I warily pulled my arm away, somewhat embarrassed for being afraid of how the pair would react. "If you don't need anything, I guess I'll be on my way." She released her hold on me without protest. Neither said a word as I walked away. When I turned around for a final look of parting, I saw that they were still staring at me, though I could not see their eyes. I felt their gaze follow me with an intensity that disturbed me no matter how much distance I put between us. I didn't look back again. I picked up my pace and dug my keys out of my pocket. The rain fell as cold as ever. I unlocked my car and was thinking about the can of chicken noodle soup I had left in my sparse pantry when I noticed that the girl had left behind a stain on my sleeve, as dark as ink and shaped like her tiny fingers. I wiped at it with my thumb, but the mark didn't budge. I sighed and looked up, only to nearly stumble backwards in shock when I saw the backseat door open and the girl sitting inside. She had removed her hat and was holding it in her hands, both of which were clean despite the mark on my jacket, with her head bowed and her knotted hair concealing her face like a curtain. "Hey!" I tried to keep my tone from betraying how unnerved I was and failed spectacularly. "What are you doing here?" She sat as wordless as before, tightly squeezing and twisting the brim of her hat with such violence that I was certain she would rip it apart. I swallowed my uneasiness. "Look," I said as calmly as I could manage, "if there's something wrong, I can't help you if you don't tell me what it is." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "Maybe it's better if I call the police and you can tell them." My voice trailed off as I watched my phone screen flicker on and off before collapsing into a scramble of pixels and shutting down entirely. I stared agape at my reflection in the black screen as a terrible feeling of dread began to wash over me. When I
didn't pay my bill?
Fuck, damn. I didn't pay that bill too? God damn. When I looked back up, the girl was gone. In her place rested her hat. The hat appeared soaked, every bit as saturated with rain as my own clothes were. But unlike the jacket and jeans that clung to my skin and chilled me to the bone, the hat didn't feel wet when I picked it up with a trembling hand. It was dry to the touch even as I watched beads of rain drip from its brim and onto the car's upholstery. I realized with something between fascination and horror that the raindrops left behind no traces where they landed. And when I cut my hand... Ghost rain. He's a good music. He's a DJ.
That sounds like a
DJ
like
Ghost
a
Rain
Yanni album or something. I was thinking like something
too.
from the 80s where it's like a.
Well, I mean, time's a flat circle, so really, it's music is the same thing. It just goes. Yanni did an album, then a DJ remixed it, and there you go.
Yeah.
I realized with something between fascination and horror that the raindrops left behind no traces where they landed, and when I cut my hand beneath the hat to catch the drops in my palms, I felt nothing but air. Furthermore, the back seat was completely dry. There were no damp footprints, no water spots, nothing at all to indicate that a girl wearing a coat glistening with rain had been sitting there mere seconds ago. I turned to fling the foul thing into the parking lot and gasped out loud when I saw the boy standing only a few feet away. She forgot her hat, I said dimly, my heart thundering madly in my chest. My mind screamed at me to jump into the car, to drive off as fast as I could, and never come back to Woodharrow Park again. But it was that same fear that left me rooted. He fucked up. Left me rooted to the spot, paralyzed and helpless, even as the boy stepped ever closer towards me. "Stop it!" I wanted to scream, but my tongue felt too thick to form the words. The boy lifted his hat. A burst of darkness erupted in my eyes, blinding me as a hellish symphony assailed my other senses. I could neither see nor move as I felt insects scuttling behind my eyes and scales slithering inside of my skull. The vile taste of putrid water filled my mouth as the deathly scent of rot flooded my nostrils. Final breaths rattling in dying tones, drowning bodies thrashing in water as they sank, screams of agony so shrill that they sounded inhuman. I heard them all and many hideous more. I stood frozen in the terrifying darkness as the rain furiously slashed at my flesh like cold blades, unable to weep or let out a watery cry for help. Suddenly, I felt something grab hold of my hand and pull me free from the loathsome trance, just as abruptly as I had been consumed by it. My vision returned, and I saw that I was now alone. Even the girl's hat had disappeared. I dove into my car and sped away from Woodharrow Park. The sky grew clearer with every mile.
I hope you physically dove into the car, head first, because as a phrase it makes sense, but in practice it would be the most impractical because you'd end up almost upside down in the seat. Then you'd have to try to twist yourself around to the right.
He spent all his money before he got laid off on this. It's one of those old school cars where you have to crawl through the window because the door doesn't work. When I got home, I peeled off my wet clothes and climbed into the shower. I sat there beneath the hot spray, immersing myself in the steam and the warmth, and jumped out the instant it turned cold. I dried off and crawled into my bed, burying myself beneath the blankets as my mind raced with the nightmare I had endured. I wondered if the children, whoever they were, had somehow been drawn to the despair I felt as I walked through the park. Perhaps my hopelessness and sorrow had served as a miserable beacon, guiding them towards me and leaving me vulnerable to their presence. I really like the term miserable beacon there. I think that's... I relate to it.
Because, but I don't think I've ever pictured a beacon as miserable, because usually you hear beacon and it means, that's... A beacon's supposed to, draw you towards something.
Yeah, well, what it's saying is it should be misery beacon. But I think he's saying, they're drawn to my misery.
Oh, no, I get what he's saying. Yeah. I like it because it's just using it in a context that's kind of the opposite of what I would think.
There was one thing I knew for certain. It was the girl who had rescued me. I had known it the second I felt her small hand touch mine. I realized now that she hadn't climbed into the car to frighten me. She had only wanted me to stay with her in the park. Tears slid down my cheeks as I thought of her being forced to forever wander Woodharrow with no one but a boy who carried hell beneath his hat to keep her company. Maybe she too had once visited the park while bearing a sadness as heavy as my own, only to wind up imprisoned by it. I slept fitfully. When I awoke the following morning, I discovered that the stain on my coat sleeve had somehow bled onto my arm. I spent hours trying to wash it off, scouring my flesh until it grew angry and raw, but the mark refused to be cleansed away. I sat on the floor of my bathroom, gazed down into the imprint of the girl's fingers on my reddened skin, and felt the horrid chill of Woodharrow's rain creep down my spine. That was last week. The mark still remains on my arm, and at night I toss and turn and vividly dream of the park. I've told myself repeatedly that I can't go back there, that I was lucky to have made it out alive and might not be so fortunate again. But I can't stop.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I would have done. I'd been like, I'm going back.
Yeah, fuck it. I mean, that's the one thing I'm kind of I'm familiar with this feeling he's describing at the beginning of the story, where you really feel like just nothing's going right for you.
You don't have anything. Yeah, yeah.
But if Ghost starts some shit with me, you better believe I'm going to see how far the rabbit hole goes.
Well, that's what
if
I mean,
I'm
especially because
fucking...
Yeah, you find that guy. It's like, I've got nothing to lose. Damn it! Bring it on, Ghosts.
I can't even buy a fucking loaf of bread. You think I'm worried? Like, oh no, I'm trapped in Woodharrow Park. I'm trapped here anyway because I have no money. I've told myself repeatedly that I can't go back there. That I was lucky to have made it out alive, and might not be so fortunate again. But I can't stop thinking about the girl. I pity and fear her in equal measure. When it rains, I look out the window and wonder if I'll see her outside waiting for me, clutching her hat and bowing her tangled head. The thought both saddens and terrifies me. So I've made a decision, and perhaps I'll live long enough to regret this one too. As soon as I finish posting this, I'm grabbing my car keys and I'm driving to Woodharrow Park. I know that I might be walking towards my own doom. I know that the marks on my arm are likely a bad omen. I know that the girl may be every bit as malevolent as the boy, and that she may be trying to lure me into a trap of her own. I know that there's a strong chance I'll never be able to come back and tell you what happened, but I can't keep reliving the same nightmare over and over again. In a way, I never truly left Woodharrow. My mind wanders its paths even as I hide away in my home. I've got to go now. Wish me luck. I have a feeling it's going to rain.
Now, I went part 2, where the next person to enter the park is haunted by a little girl, a little boy,
and some
unemployed
dude.
Awkward, like 20-year-old in like khakis or cargo shorts. Yeah.
Just sitting in the back of your car when you're trying to escape, like, hey, you got a shower?
I can't wait to get my chicken soup.
Yeah.
No, I liked it. That was a good story.
I like that ending because it goes to, like, for people who don't know, creepypastas now, they're just sort of a generic name for internet horror stories, but what they were in their original outset was like forum posts, and the idea was like you told it, and it was kind of like we've done stories from the No Sleep Reddit, where they stay kind of true to that original idea. Is like you tell these stories, but you tell them as if they're real, like you're documenting something that's actually happened or is happening to you.
Yeah, and a lot of times they almost all seem to use this almost like journal format, like I'm writing this down so that if you find it, you know what's happened to me. But a lot of times it feels forced, or it doesn't make sense. It's in a context like, how many have we told where it's like, this monster's been stalking me for weeks and it's right outside my door, so I thought I'd stop and write this entire journal.
Yeah.
Like,
which, I mean, to be fair, Lovecraft did that, you know, like,
well, sure.
Like a lot of authors did that sort of style thing, and it doesn't always make sense.
And it's not wrong. I mean, it's fiction. Don't get me wrong. Fiction doesn't have to make sense. That bugs me when like people, like, it's a fun game to sit around and watch movies and point out the like plot holes, but it doesn't necessarily in and of itself make it a bad movie. Now they can, but like the world's, it's fiction. They don't have to add up 100% because that's not the point. Yeah. But when it does, it's kind of cool. Like this one makes a lot more sense because he's planning his return back. He knows it probably won't go well. He could take 3 months to write this countdown if he wanted to, and then go back. So it doesn't feel as like forced or as
like that cliche. Kind of ending of like a journal entry wrapping up with like the threat of the whole story looming. I think it's I don't have a problem with it in itself, but it is kind of overdone, and like you said, like it works better here where the protagonist can explain like why the threat hasn't gone away. Why is he gonna invite it back in, and why is it going to, like, why is the story ending here? You know, like, and that's what I mean is like the model for these stories originally, like that's a really strong way to end a story back in the day, because then you stopped posting Like, you would write that story, and then you would disappear from that thread. If you're a real hardcore writer, you would never post with that account again.
Right.
And people would be like, they would know it's a story, but obviously, but they would have fun with it.
That's what left the door open for well, maybe it is real. Like you said, they know it's not, but maybe it is.
But
that's the whole thing with urban legends.
Well, I mean, Slender Man, it's turned into the ultimate internet horror thing. But what built that up was all these people coming in and telling these stories about this monster as if they've had this encounter with it, even though they were inventing it amongst themselves, as it was almost like this sort of improv horror fiction. But you always had to do shit to add weight to it, so people were manufacturing newspaper articles about disappearing kids over the last fucking 100 years and stuff.
I'm distracted now. I want to come up with a specific forum for it where you do that, where everybody comes in and posts as if they're real, their first-hand run-ins, but with instead of Slender Man, it's here's my run-in with the Hamburglar.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what I mean. Creepypasta has evolved, and now I'm sure that's a thing. Because that guy, that's honestly, I always thought he was pretty scary. I think he is scarier than Slenderman.
And that's what's his name? The purple one. It's
Grimace.
Grimace. Yeah, I don't know why I can never remember his name.
Why do they call him Grimace?
I don't know. That's the weirdest thing because a grimace is not a good expression.
Yeah.
And for it to be a food mascot.
Well, also he's kind of a fucking abomination of a California raisin, right? He's the purple thing, right?
Yeah, he's the big, oddly, pear-shaped.
Yeah. He kind of looks like those, that candy dots.
My guess is what happened is, somebody's, whoever the graphic designer was that came up with because Ronald's a clown, but he's a person. That's a real thing. The Hamburglar, he's cartoon proportions, but he's just a person that burgles hamburgers.
Yeah.
And then you've got Grimace is oh yeah, so we got the clown, a burglar, and a purple blob. And it's his pin just broke and he had to justify why.
This is the mold that grows on your sandwich if you don't eat it all right away. Yeah, I don't know what his deal is. Fuck it, we have a few minutes. I'm gonna Wikipedia Grimace and figure out what the fuck that's supposed to be.
The other thing I'm thinking is now I kind of want to write a continuation of the story you just told where it's I'm going to the park. I know I probably will never return. And then the next entry is Tuesday, December 30th or 32nd. Yeah. December 30th is yeah, I went to the park yesterday. Kid's mom was there. She apologized for the creepy game that they like to play and offered to pay for my dry cleaning on my coat. Turns out that they're completely regular kids. And the mom's yeah, they do this all the time to people. I'm sorry.
All right. So in that universe, it's the McDonald Land Cinematic Universe coming 2021.
Michael Bay.
That'd be awesome. I would watch all these movies before I'd watch another fucking Marvel movie right now. Grimace was a large purple monster who was first introduced in November 1971 as the evil Grimace. In his first appearances, he was one of the main antagonists and was depicted with 2 pairs of arms, which he used to steal sodas and shakes.
What the hell's their fascination with, things that steal their stuff?
So this is actually pretty fucking scary because it means he was here's this big purple Goro, basically, who would steal your fucking food. Eventually, evil was dropped from his name, and in 1972, he was reintroduced as a protagonist with just a normal set of arms. But he's still just a purple thing. So his thing now is he is rather clumsy, but he's a good guy. He's not trying to take your shit. He found out Ronald will give him a job, I guess, and he can just buy his food. But nobody, there's nothing here to explain why there's just a fucking purple monster. Everything else is burger themed except him, and oddly enough, that fucking clown.
Yeah, I mean, the clown. What's that have to do with anything? It's just like
he's color coordinated with the logo. That's it. That's the criteria to be a mascot. Like maybe the Carl's Jr. star. It might be Hardee's where you're at, but that star is like he wasn't available.
I was just mentioning, we don't have them, either of them here. There's some up north of like Canton area where my wife's from. It's about 2 hours away. I know there's one up there because we hit it every now and then on our drive back. But anyway, yeah.
But I mean, that's a red yellow thing. That's yeah. Fuck you, Ronald. You make no sense. And fuck you, Grimace.
See, and I just had to look up because you're like, oh yeah, Grimace, and he steals milkshakes and stuff. And I'm like, well, did he predate the Hamburglar? Did they need like that thief? No, they came around at the exact same time. They're like,
yeah,
we need something that steals things, but we can't have the Hamburglar steal other things.
Well, he just steals ham.
Right.
He just hamburgles. Grimace is kind of terrifying though, because it's like a fucking purple blob spider coming to take your shakes. Like,
yeah, and I imagine we were looking at the same website, but his they kind of toned it down a little bit, but his facial expression is just like. And then there were also the I forget what they called them, but basically the pom-poms with legs. They came around, and there's the bird girl, like chicken girl. I don't know what her fucking name is either. Like, I don't know. Props to whoever got to come up with those, because you can tell they waited till the night before they were due, and they're like,
actually, the early versions of him with like the 4 arms or whatever. As much as I thought, that's pretty scary. Modern day Grimace just looks stoned as fuck. So maybe that's what they did. They just got him really high. And it's like, stop taking people's shit. And he's like, okay. But still, yeah, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. Fucking, that was when marketing was really fucked up. Like, I know there's a psychological... That's when they probably found out, like, psychologically, more people will buy more soda if they think this purple thing is off in the shadows, waiting to steal it from you.
A lot of fast food success, when it first came around, was being fast food, because people weren't used to that. And how do you get people in and out really quickly is make them think that this purple abomination may show up and, like...
We have this fucking blob that's... Like, take your goddamn Coke when you go to the bathroom.
Give me a Big Mac meal with Coke and make it quick.
Well, hey, we did solve a mystery.
Yeah.
And by that I mean we didn't come up with any satisfactory answer for why the fuck they thought that was a necessary feature of their advertising campaign. But that's because there is no answer, because no one can defend it. Yeah. So I feel good about myself. As tired as I am, I'm a goddamn genius.
Yeah, I can definitively say I know more about Grimace now than I did prior to today's recording session.
Just a little bit of enlightenment from us to you, dear listener. And we'll have more enlightenment next time, I'm sure. We're good at that.
I don't know. It's back on me next week, so who knows what the hell we'll get.
To be fair, I didn't plan Grimace. That's the most important parts of the show are the stuff you can't prepare for. And that's my excuse for why I never prepare anything.
I was in the middle of working up a 4-page notes on Grimace, and now you just fucking shot that all to hell, so I'll have to come up with a new topic.
Well, I just, I saved our listeners from you wasting a half an hour of their time with a story about a fucking blob monster who should not be. Yeah, we're done. I'm done. I'm so fucking tired. So let's call this an episode, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Ciao.
Toodaloo.
Bye.
Au revoir.
I don't know any other ways.